In this lesson, we are going to create user sign up in our Ionic application. We'll start by creating a new page called the sign up page and design the sign up form, and then we'll write the code to allow the users to sign up for an account using Firebase authentication. So here we are back inside Visual Studio Code, and the first thing I'll do is create a new page called the sign up page, and I'll use the Ionic CLI to create this new page. I'll go ahead and type in Ionic generate page sign up, which will be the name of the page, and press enter. This will create the new page for us. Now we'll be working inside signup.page.html file where we'll be designing the form. The first thing I'll do in this file is change the title to create an account, and I'll also change the color of the toolbar. Since we are designing the page, I'll also run Ionic serve to see how the actual page looks like. So here you can see that on the right, the Ionic application loads up, and here I'll have to change the URL to point to the sign up page. And now we get to see the sign up page. So inside our Ion content, we'll start by creating a new list using the Ion list component. Inside this Ion list, we'll create an Ion item with an Ion label and an Ion input. The position of the label will be stacked and the text on the label will be email. For the Ion input, the type will be email, and we can also have a placeholder text. Let's save this. And you can see that we have a nice input field on our page. Let's copy this Ion item and paste it just below it, and I'll make changes to use it for the password field. Finally, after the Ion list, I'll create two buttons. The first button will be used to allow the users to sign up for an account, and this will be a block button. I'll give it a color of danger, and this will also be a round button. So I'll give it a shape of round. And there we have our button. I'll create another button, so I'll make a copy of the first one and I'll make the required changes. This will be the button that will navigate the user to the login page if they already have an account. And this will be a clear button. So I'll set the fill property to clear, and I'll also remove the shape. And there we have the second button. The last thing I'll do is add some heading to this form, and we'll use this heading to add the name of the application on the top. For this, I'll add an Ion item, and within the Ion item, I'll add the text to do app. The text is too small, so we'll wrap it inside an h1 tag. And now the font size of the text is much larger. To add some more styling, I'll add a CSS class to the Ion item called vertical space. You can name this class whatever you want. And I'll also add another class to the h1 tag called center. These classes do not exist as of now. So next we'll be writing these classes inside signup.page.scss file. So we'll start by defining the vertical space class, which will add 75 pixels of margin on the top and 75 pixels of margin at the bottom. Feel free to play around with different values of margin and use what looks best to you. For me, 75 pixels works the best. We'll also define the class called center, and within the center class we'll define a width of 100%, and we'll also set the text align property to center. This will move the to-do app text in the center of the page. So now we have the application title right there in the center of the page with some space on the top and the bottom. Looks good, but we still need to get rid of this line that we have under the text. And for that, Ionic has a variable, and the name of the variable is inner border width, and we'll set it to 0 pixels. This will remove this border from the Ion item completely. And you can see that as the application refreshes, the line is gone. And while we are at it, I'll also make the second button a block button. This will center the text on the button. So now that the form looks good, let's add bindings to the input fields. So on the first input field, I'll use an ng model and I'll set it equal to email. And similarly, for the second input field, I'll use an ng model and I'll set it equal to the password. Next, we'll wire up the click event of the button to a function called signup. And for the second button, we'll bind the click event to another function. Let's call it goToLogin. So now that the HTML file is complete, let's go to our signup.page.ts file and start writing the code. So the first thing we'll do is import Firebase because we'll be using the Firebase authentication SDK. So I'll start by typing in import star as Firebase from Firebase. And then inside the class, we'll define an email property which will be of the type string, and we'll also define a property called password which will also be of the type string. Next, we'll create the function called signup, and this function will use the Firebase authentication SDK to create a new user using the values of the email and password properties. So I'll just go ahead and type in firebase.auth.createUser with email and password. This is the function that takes in an email and a password as arguments. I'll change it to password. And once the user has been created, we can execute the then function. Inside the then function, we receive a user credential object. Let's call it user data. And this is the place where we'll navigate the user to the application page. We'll come back to this piece of code when we'll create the page where we'll display all the to-dos to the user. In the catch block, we'll handle all the errors. Up until now, we have been logging the errors to the console, but now we'll be using a toast controller to display the errors to the user as a toast notification. So we'll have to import the toast controller first. So I'll just go ahead and type in import toast controller, and we'll import it from the package at Ionic/Angular. Once you have imported the toast controller, you need to inject it into the signup page class by passing it as an argument to the constructor. Finally, inside the catch block, we'll type in this.toastcontroller.create, and the create function takes in a JSON object. Inside the JSON object, we'll set the message property equal to error.message, where error.message contains the message specifying the error. And we'll also set the duration to 3000 milliseconds. So the toast notification will be displayed to the user for 3 seconds, and after that it will be hidden automatically. Since the create function also returns a promise, we'll have to execute the then function where we get the toast object as a parameter on which we can execute the present function. That's all we need to do to display a toast notification to the user. Inside the success callback, we'll also log the user data object to the console just for debugging purposes. So now that the code is done, let's save everything and let's test it out in the browser. So first of all, I'll clear out the console and I'll type in an email and a very small password. And you can see that I get this notification that password must be at least 6 characters long. So I'll change the password. And I'll hit on the create button again. And this time, you can see that a user credential object is logged to the console. It contains all the information about the user that has just been created on Firestore. If you go back to Firebase console and have a look at the authentication section, you will see the newly created user there. And the ID of the user matches with the ID that we get here in the console, which confirms that a user is successfully created on Firebase. And that's pretty much we need to do to sign users up in our to-do application. So now that the signup is working, in the next lesson, we'll be working on creating the user login page.